Today I'm going to be sharing the results of this blue panel LED versus this yellow panel LED light experiment for sunflower microgreens. So stay tuned for the test. How's it going, everyone? Today I am starting another test for this blue light versus yellow panel light experiment. Now these two panel lights right here are the best panel lights that we have had an experience with. So what we wanted to do is put them against each other because we have not done that yet outside of the other trial that we are starting. And we want to see which one comes out on top. Is it going to be our higher spectrum, which is the white and blue lights, or is it going to be our lower spectrum, which is more of the yellow kind of red light? So what I'm doing right now is I have put 8 cups of coco coir into each one of these 1020 trays from Bootstrap Farmer. These are actually their new 1020 trays, which are now made in America, and they have this little finger slot, which does, believe it or not, provide a huge ton of value to these trays. One of the biggest issues we had in the past with Bootstrap Farmer trays is they used to sit flush against each other, and it's really hard to get them separated. But now that they have this little finger inlet right here, it really does make it easier for bottom watering. So what I'm gonna do real quick is I'm gonna go ahead and spread out all of this coco coir. I'm gonna get nice and even, and if I see any clumps like this one, I'm just gonna break it up inside of that tray. So I'll see you guys in just a moment once this is all even. All right, so I'm finishing up this last tray right here and getting this all as even as I can. Trying to spread out this coco coir. All right, so all these trays are pretty even when it comes to the coco coir now. What I need to do is we need to choose a crop, and for this I'm going to do sunflowers because we already got some purple kohlrabi that we're going to be testing out, and I know that the purple kohlrabi will provide us with a lot of coloration. We get to see the height differences and everything on that, so I think that'll kind of cover the brassica territory to figure out what that height is going to be like and the growth is going to be like. But now sunflowers are one of the most popular crops, and I want to see what these lights are going to do to some sunflowers. So let me just scoot one of these trays out of the way right here. One-handed 25-pound bag of Johnny Seed sunflowers. So let me make sure my scale is zeroed out. I'm going to be using some black oil sunflower here. And then we like to always use organic seed whenever possible. So the majority of what you see in our videos is always going to be organic seed, except every now and then if we're testing a new seed brand. So what I want to do is I want to get, let's do 120 grams of sunflower per tray, because that's a pretty good number there where it's not going to be too dense. Oh, well, 125. Okay, we'll stick with 125 for the rest of these trays. I'm going to set down this big old 25-pound bag. And before I actually seed these, what we want to do is, because sunflower can be notoriously dirty, I mean, you can kind of see it right here. You have like a little fuzziness from the dust that's on them. You can especially see it over here in this one. So what we like to do is we like to rinse off our sunflowers first. Some people like to do a sanitizing soak or something like that. We like to avoid sanitizing soaks whenever possible, so we're just gonna give this a nice rinse. I got this guy, which is already sanitized. I'm gonna go ahead and pour my sunflower into here, turn on my water hose. I'm gonna set it to, I like to do flat, because it gives me like a nice arc with a lot of power to knock off any debris. So now we're just gonna start spraying these guys off. Give them a nice rinse. Make sure we get all that extra debris off. Any dust, any dirt. Let that drain a little bit. And let's go back and see the tray. Okay, cool. So we'll start with this tray right here. This is kind of crooked on the side. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of spread these out as evenly as I can. So one thing that happens whenever you get seeds wet is they like to kind of clump together. So what I kind of do is I do kind of like a power flick to get these out of my, I'm just making up terms here, to get these sunflowers kind of spread out, make sure that they don't clump together up on the surface, because I don't really want that. I don't want them clumped. I want these kind of as spread out as I can on top of this coco coir. So I'm just going to kind of do this for just a second and get all these guys spread out as evenly as I can. If it clumps up a little bit, that's all right, because I'm going to go back with my hand. I'm going to kind of spread these out just a touch. Okay, cool. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and spread out this the seeds right here and try to get these unclumped a little bit. So I'm just kind of like pat scooting. We're doing a pat scoot, the old pat scoot motion. And I don't really like pushing them into the corners or the sides, because generally the sidewalls are the slowest to germinate because it has the least pressure and allows the most air in. So I try to keep everything, if I can, just off that sidewall and just, I'd say probably like a good 1/2 inch spacing on the sidewalls there. So this is one tray down. What I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna do the rest of these trays, and I'll see you guys in just a moment once I've seeded all of these trays with 125 grams of sunflower per tray, and I'll be right back. All right, so I have all of these trays now seeded with 125 grams of black oil sunflower that has been rinsed for each one of these trays. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna spray this with a prophylactic spray, so it's a 1:20 ratio for hydrogen peroxide. I did 1 ounce of hydrogen peroxide, food grade, and 20 ounces of water. So I'm gonna go ahead and spray all of these seeds. And the reason is that sunflowers can be a little notorious for molding and stuff like that because the seed holes break down very quickly, and it begins a natural biological process which involves mold and stuff like that. So we try to combat that by going ahead and treating it with an H2O2 spray proactively. So I'm gonna spray all these. Ideally a hand pump bottle, something that you build up pressure in and then you can just kind of squeeze the trigger once and it sprays for a prolonged period would be more ideal. This, you will give yourself carpal tunnel if you do this every single day, all day. So do not use this if you're gonna do a ton of trays like this. Okay, so Mandy brought up a good question, which is how often do we spray with the H2O2 spray? Now for sunflowers, I will spray it throughout the entire germination process. And then after that, it just goes into the light and then we begin bottom watering it. So I only use this H2O2 during the germination process, which is generally the first, for sunflowers, about 3 to 4 days. And for most crops, it's about 3 to 4 days for the germination process. If you guys are curious what the germination process is, we're basically just wanting these seeds to break out of their seed holes, dig their roots down into the medium and begin standing up. And that's whenever we are through the germination process, once they have actually germinated and they've rooted themselves and they're beginning to start to act like actual adult plants. So that's what we're looking for. Set this to the side. Now what I need to do is I'm gonna stack these up because sunflowers do like weight, and I'm gonna group them together in their individual groups. The white trays and the black trays are together. Bam, and now we need to put some weight on top of this. I'm gonna use a 15-pound paver. All right. Now these guys are officially, not officially, officially germinating. I'm gonna go ahead and put these onto the shelf. And then in a few days, I will see you guys whenever these are ready to go into the light, and we'll talk a little bit more about the lights. Now, if you guys are curious about what lights to use for growing, or you guys are curious about the germination process, or you have a lot of questions around microgreens, be sure to check out our book, Becoming a Microgreen Master, where we have done everything that we could to describe everything we learned over the past 2 years of growing inside of this grow space, experimenting with all kinds of different lights, nutrients, and everything that we could possibly think to test. So we packed a ton of knowledge into this book, and it's under $16. We did that on purpose because we want this book to be as available to people as possible. I mean, that's the cost of 3 trays, basically. Each tray is about $5. So we're selling you everything that we've learned in 2 years for the price of 3 trays. And I'm hoping that it saves you guys a lot of value, because if you mess up a few trays, you know, right there, the book would have paid for itself had you actually had that knowledge and learned it ahead of time. So we just wanted to do this to help you guys out. Also, if you guys are interested, be sure to smash that thumbs up button, because it really does help out our channel, and click the subscribe button and the notification bells. That way you guys get notified when new videos come out. I'll see you guys in a few days when it's time to put these into the light and talk a little bit more about what these lights are, how much they put out, and what to expect from them. All right, we are on day 3 of the germination process for these sunflower microgreens. I want to take a peek and see how the germination is going. It really has nothing to do with the lights, but I just want to see how everything's looking germination-wise. Let me pop off our white. Oof, we got some really good growth happening here. All those radicals are diving down into that medium. It looks great on this white side, as well as our black tray. So both of these are looking like we're getting some really solid germination here. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna get all these guys watered, and then in about probably another day or 2, we're gonna put these into blackout, and we're gonna be into the light soon. So I'll see you guys in just a few days. Spray! There we go. All right, we are on day 5 for these sunflowers, and today they're gonna be going into the light because I kind of took a peek at them after I took off the weight, and they're looking pretty good. So I'm gonna pull this over to the table and we'll look at all of these side by side. Oh yeah, we got some good germination happening on all of this. So I can tell that they're ready for the light because I'm seeing a ton of yellow, which means I'm seeing a lot more plant than I am seeing seed hole. So looking at the growth on all of these side by side for the baseline, I would say everything is looking really, really solid and really quite even. This one looks like it's got probably the furthest ahead growth, this white tray right here compared to everything else. But overall it does, I mean, all these do look quite comparable in their growth. And something that you will notice during germination is generally the outside is going to have a lot more of those seed holes because that's the slowest to germinate from the airflow and also the lack of weight usually. So you'll kind of notice that on all of the trays. Like right here's another one where you can see a lot more of those like black seed holes all up and down the sides. And the same right here for this last low group over here. Regardless though, I think that the growth on all of these looks really great and it's going to make for a really nice video for a lighting test. So one thing I want to do real quick is I'm seeing some kind of gross little seed holes, so I need my little clippers here. I don't know what happened to them. All right, so I couldn't find my tweezers, so I'm just going to use these guys to pick out because I did see this little kind of nasty right here. And I want to get this out of here, that way it doesn't cause any issues with all the growth. Knock that into my compost, see if there's anything else. This little guy right here can go because it's just growing in the wrong direction. Same, I got like one like right here, one right here. I'm just gonna go through and get anything else kind of like that out of these trays because I don't want stuff decaying in my canopy. Alrighty, that looks pretty great. So now we need to get these watered really quite well. So we're gonna put them in the light, which means we're gonna begin bottom watering, but I do notice that the medium's pretty dry out on the top and we do have some seed holes left. So what I wanna do is I wanna add a little bit of water to the top of these. That way I can help these seed holes break free a little bit. So I'm gonna go ahead and hit all of these trays with a nice quick top watering. Once again, I would very much recommend a hand pump sprayer if you're gonna be doing a lot of this because spraying by hand is really quite unsustainable. It's gonna take you a long time and it's gonna hurt your fingers after a little bit. But I like to do it for the sake of video. It feels more hands-on. Okay, so you'll notice I mostly hit the outsides because that's what I'm worried about with the seed holes. And bam. Now these guys have a decent top watering to them. Whenever I get them put on the shelf, we will get some bottom water added. But first what I want to do is I want to show you guys the both the lux output and the par for these lights. Now first what I have here is a digital light meter. This just measures the lux output or lumens output, which is measured in lux. So let's see here. All right, so this is measuring in times 10. So this means that I'm at 16,500-ish for the lux output here on the blue lights. So let's see, what's our minimum? So it goes anywhere from about, towards the edges, about 10,000 up to peaking in the middle, close to 17,000 lux. Now let's check out for our yellow lights. On the edge, we are around kind of the same, 11,000, 12,000. So it's a little bit stronger on the top ones. And in the middle, it actually peaks, and I need to go up to times 100, and we're about 24,000 lux. So we have a really high output on this top one. It's 24,000. Blue one, about 16,000. So we have about an 8,000 lux advantage on the top shelf. Now let's take a look with a par meter because they say lumens are for humans, lumens are I need more coffee. Lumens are for humans, pars for plants. Jeez, you would think I had so many of those people saying that on our page at one point that I would probably have that memorized. Okay, so now with our par sitting in the middle, let's say right about here, we're sitting around 226 par on the blue shelf, and if we go towards the edge, it does drop down pretty substantially to about 100. So 100 to about 240. Now let's go up to our yellow shelf. On the edge, we're seeing about 12,000. So again, it's just a little bit stronger on the edge for the yellow, and in the middle, we're sitting around 370. Yeah, 370 par. So we are substantially higher once again on both outputs for the top shelf. So 360 for the top in the middle and about 240 for the bottom in the middle. All this is fun, but what does it actually translate into? That's what we want to figure out today. So I'm gonna pull these over. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna match the coloration. So I've already got some light tests going for some purple kohlrabi here. So I'm gonna put my white trays up top. Ooh, that looks good. And then we're gonna put our black trays in the blue light. Now I'm gonna get some bottom water added to these, and bottom watering is quite simple. Do we have our bucket? We don't. I need to go add, 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 I need to go add. Now I have me a fresh batch of pH balanced water. So I pH balance our water to about 5.5, 6.0. I generally do this if we're gonna be adding nutrients, but this is just regular filter tap water. I'm not gonna be adding any nutrients because I wanna focus on what the lights do, not what the nutrients do. So what I'm gonna do is get me some water. I'm gonna do probably about 1.5 cups, yeah, about 1.33 cups. I'll kind of play it by ear for each one of these because they were in different levels of dry out for each one. But the main thing is I want this medium to be nice and moist because I do not want these seeds drying out. But what you can do with sunflowers is they do benefit from a dry out because they will get really red stems, and they will also develop a nuttier flavor if you do allow them to dry out. But again, I want to focus on what lights do, not what certain techniques do with growing. So my whole plan here is to just try to keep the soil nice and moist so these things can just grow as best they can. All right, so I've got water added to these. They are now under the lights. We have also misted the seed holes that we can hopefully help those break out. What we're gonna do now is we're just gonna start waiting and just see what happens. So I will probably give you guys an update tomorrow. We'll see how these guys look after 24 hours in the light, and hopefully we get some exciting results. So I'll see you guys then. All right, guys, we are on day 2 of these sunflowers being in the light. They've been in the light for basically full 24 hours, and I'm starting to see them peak up, and they're looking really happy. Now, one thing I'm noticing is a lot of those cotyledons are busting open, and they're pushing off those seed holes, but we still do have a pretty substantial amount of seed holes kind of still hanging on. Down here in the blue lights, I am noticing one little group right here where these haven't fully germinated and they're not fully standing up yet. So we are seeing a little bit slower growth. Really, I think one more day in germination would have probably helped with this one tray, but overall, I think all these are gonna recover in time. Looking at the yellow lights, again, I'm seeing some really great growth and all these cotyledons really popping open. And I would say that I think these two under the yellow light have popped open a lot more of their cotyledons in comparison with the blue lights. I am seeing a little bit of red on the stems in both the yellow groups and the blue light groups, and this is more of a dehydration factor. Yesterday I noticed that towards the end of the day the tray was a little bit dehydrated, and what that'll do is it'll create a redder stem and give it a little bit of a nuttier flavor, and that is perfectly okay that these slightly dried out and it was all even and all of them have gotten that slight red stem. So what I'm gonna do right now is I'm gonna get all these watered, and we're gonna give these a few more days to start really peaking up and busting out of those seed holes, and then I'll see you guys in a few days with hopefully some really exciting results between the two of these groups. See you then. All right, you guys, we are on day 8 for these sunflowers, which means that this is the 4th day that they are underneath these lights. So let's go ahead and take a quick look at both sets of these trays, starting with the blue trays on the bottom. So right off the bat, I am noticing that this tray right here on the right does seem to have a lot better mounding to it, although there is a little bit of a low section here in the back, and then kind of the opposite over here. We're seeing a little bit more mounding on the back and then a little bit of a low section in the front. Overall though, the growth on both of these trays looks great. We do have quite a few little seed holes stuck on it still. Normally what I would do is I would take my hand and brush and knock off a lot of those seed holes, but since this is an experiment to see how these crops perform underneath these specific lights, I'm going to leave them on and see what they naturally are able to kind of pop themselves out of. Now, taking a look at the top trays here, I will say that it feels like a lot more of these cotyledons are open, especially here. This tray on the right hand side seems to be doing quite well. I'm seeing what looks to be less of the seed holes on both of these trays, and overall the growth on both of these looks really incredible. I'm seeing a little bit of the red stems happening, I'm seeing the right stem height, and we are just now beginning to see some true leaves on some of these, which means tomorrow I will be harvesting all of these trays. So that's it for today. I'm gonna go ahead and get some bottom water added to both of these trays, and then I will see you guys tomorrow for harvest day. Alrighty, y'all, we are on day 9 of this lighting experiment for these sunflower microgreens. These have now been in the light for 4 full days, and today is the 5th day that they have been partially in the light. So taking a look at them, I am beginning to see the true leaf developing. Now, if you're not familiar, the two leaves on the outside are the first two leaves that come out, and those are called the cotyledons. And those two little leaves that you see in the middle are called the first set of true leaves. Now, the reason we want to harvest at this stage is that if these true leaves begin to get much bigger, what's going to happen is they're going to start to become really bitter in flavor, and really they just become kind of unenjoyable to most people. So we like to harvest them as soon as they start to peek out just a little bit. So I am seeing that on all these trays here. I'm seeing it on the yellow panel LED lights as well as the blue panel LED lights. Now, first glance, I am seeing a lot more seed holes than I'm comfortable with. Generally, what I would have done is taken my hand throughout this process and helped knock off some of these seed holes, perhaps even taking it over to my sink area and kind of giving them a rinse and shake at the same time to really get those off. However, this is an experiment to see how these lights perform and how these plants are just going to pop themselves out naturally, so we have left them in their natural state. I'm going to go ahead and get this table pulled over here, and let's get all these trays pulled down. I have a mobile table. It moves where I want. Feels like I'm gonna do. Sometime I come over you. You're gonna get there. You're gonna get there. All right, so remember, the black trays came out of the blue light, and the white trays are coming out of the yellow lights. So let's get these set down, and I'm gonna swoop-dee right over here. So the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna turn off this yellow blurple, oh my goodness, this blurple light over here. It's not a yellow light, CJ. That is definitely pink and purple in color. So I'm gonna turn that off so that I can get a much better color representation on these crops. I'm also going to turn off this blue light because it is fairly close to this as well. Okay, so at first glance, I actually believe that I'm seeing both of the blue groups being slightly darker in color on their cotyledons compared to this yellow fluorescent side. Now, just kind of taking a look at seed hole density on all of this, I am seeing some little good spots over here on the blue trays where we do have a lot of these little seed holes still just kind of hanging on. But overall, I do see quite a few of these sunflowers that have begun to push out and knock off those seed holes, opening up into a nice big Y shape. As for the two yellow panel lights, I am noticing a little bit more light colors. In fact, I'm seeing some ombres happening in some of these cotyledons here all throughout this yellow panel tray. So I think that is quite interesting, and especially over here on the side of this yellow panel tray, I am seeing what appears to be a much lighter color. Taking a look at the heights and the overall growth, all of them are fairly even, though no, I'm not seeing one that looks further ahead. Perhaps this one tray right here that is blue does seem to be in this back little area, a little bit taller than the rest of the groups, but you know, that's very insignificant in height difference there compared to the rest of these. So overall, at first glance, it'd be really hard to kind of differentiate which ones have been grown in what light. So what we need to do now is we need to get all of these harvested. And what we're going to do as soon as we harvest these is we're going to collect our harvest weights. We're going to compare those. We're also going to take a look at the appearance side by side. As I harvest, I'm going to pull a little group from each section of each tray and set that into a white tray. That way we can take a close look at the appearance on these. And then finally, we're going to do a taste test and see if the flavor was affected at all by the different colors of these lights. And then lastly, what we'll do is we will recap all of that. W's and R's mess me up, man. And then we will also do, we'll talk about the cost to run these lights, how much energy they draw per day and everything like that. And that way you guys can have a kind of final verdict on this and make your choice. So I'm gonna go ahead and get into the harvesting stage. Stay tuned. Since I'm wanting to use this product, at this point, we've already kind of seen how many of the seed holes have stuck on. I'm gonna go ahead and start knocking some of these off because I do wanna use these, and I'd rather knock them off now and not have to deal with it later. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna tilt it. I'm gonna knock a lot of these onto my ground. And to do that, I'm just gonna take my hand, I'm gonna do this motion back and forth here, and you can see how many of these are flicking off and kind of getting spring loaded out onto our floor, which I can then sweep into a pile and vacuum up or toss into our compost pile. I do feel like these white trays under the yellow lights did get rid of more of their seed holes compared to the blue lights. It kind of looks like it, at least to me. All right, that looks pretty good. Now I will say all these feel quite firm. Something that happens if the crop doesn't have sufficient light, it'll become a little lanky, the stem won't be as strong, the cotyledons won't feel as firm. All of these do feel quite strong in their grip and their stance in this tray. And last tray, let's do this away from my algae. That is much, much better. So we got rid of a lot of those. So it would have been nice to do that throughout the process. That way you really allow these cotyledons to open up, absorb all that light, and not have these little yellow tips like we have. But again, I wanted to leave this as natural as possible. I'm gonna harvest. I'll see you guys in just a second. That is some really big bags of sunflowers right there. Stay. You guys may not know this, but I'm actually known as a microgreen trainer as well. Stay, sit, good boys. All right, so let's go ahead and recap our harvest weights for all of these. I have the numbers in my pocket. Boop. So let's go ahead and take a peek here. So as for the blue tray groups, which are on this side, we had a harvest weight on the first tray of 644 grams, and the second tray had a harvest weight of 601 grams. Our average for those two groups was 622.5 grams. As for the yellow tray side, the first tray had a harvest weight of 625 grams, and the second tray had a harvest weight of 573 grams. That made our average for both of these groups 599 grams, which leaves us with a 23.5 gram average difference average in the blue favor group. So the blue trays did win in harvest weight overall, though I would say it was very close across both of these. Now let's go ahead and talk about the appearance. So this is my blue trays over here, and these are my yellow trays right here. Starting with our blue trays, I am seeing some really nice red down in the stem, but that's more caused by dehydration more than anything, but I am seeing some really good stem height on this. Now the cotyledons do not look nice and dark and rich. They do look very healthy overall. I am really enjoying the growth and look of those. As for the second tray, they're a little bit shorter. Oh, we got one. This is, if you guys aren't familiar, this is kind of the effects of like dampen off or something like that. So this is usually something that happens when the seed is growing. It gets a little bit of a pathogen in it, and it kills off the middle of that stem. So as for the rest of this, I'm seeing some beautiful reds down here. I'm seeing some really great coloration in these cotyledons. They are a nice deep dark green. Though the Y formation is a little bit tighter than I would like, I would really prefer these to be a lot more open up. Kind of like this guy right here is what you're looking for a picturesque sunny. Though I will bet you that these will have a much sweeter flavor because they look a little bit younger in their growth. So these are the Relassi yellow panel trays, and both of these look really great as well. I'm really liking the deep dark greens that I'm seeing in this. And the true leaves are not too developed. The stem height is nice, but I am noticing a little bit less red compared to both the blue groups. I'm seeing a lot more red in the stems of these blue groups compared to these yellows so far. Though this second tray over here on this yellow side does have one really good looking, like this is a picturesque sunny. If all your sunnies turn out like this, you have done an amazing job growing them. As for the rest of them, everything's looking really quite healthy, and you can see a little bit of that kind of dampen thing happening here in that second little yellow tray right there. So I'm gonna go ahead and toss that guy. But overall, I'm very happy with the growth on both of these, and it seems like the second tray too also has those Ys formed a little bit tighter than I would like. I'd prefer them to be a little bit more open like this top tray did. So winner in overall appearance, I'm gonna have to go with the blue group because I'm really liking the red in the stems. The colors are right on. I do like the growth a lot more in these. And yes, overall, I'm going to go with the appearance winner as the blue trays, although overall, none of these really look bad in my opinion. Now let's go ahead and jump into a taste test where I get to awkwardly chew for you guys on camera, and I hand some to Mandy to also confirm the flavors on these. So let's go ahead and start off with the first tray over here of the blue panel. All right, so let's go ahead and get some flavors. Okay, I really like the flavor overall. I'm noticing it's not bitter. I'm getting a very fresh green flavor from those sunflowers. I'm not really noticing the kind of sunflower nuttiness to it that I really prefer. I bet if I had gotten this red stem, I would get a little bit more of that flavor, but overall, I think that the flavor on those sunflowers are really incredible. I would eat I was gonna say eat the crap out of them, but you know, I don't know if that's okay on camera. I would eat a lot of those in a salad or in a burger, however I want. Now let's go ahead and jump over to, let's say this guy right here. I'm gonna try the yellow panel group. Immediately, I'm catching a lot of bitterness. I got more bitterness, but overall, it really wasn't too bad. It does do that slightly astringent flavor with these, more than I did notice in the blue labeled. Yeah, Mandy was saying her tongue feels coated. Mine does too. It's kind of got that waxy texture to it. So a little bit more bitterness, but overall I think the flavor is okay. I would prefer these to be a little bit sweeter, and a little bit more mild in the flavor. Now let's jump over to, let's just check this bottom one now. Check the bottom. Here you go, Mandy. Very crunchy. Immediately getting that bitterness again. Overall though, good flavor. I wouldn't prefer that over that first blue panel light so far. Not bad, but not really my favorite. All right, second blue group. And let's do this. Last taste test. I am getting a slight bitterness.
Me too.
Oh wow. That slight bitterness was comparable to the first of the yellow. I was expecting those red stems to really be popping, especially because these cotyledons haven't fully opened up. I was expecting this to be a little bit sweeter in flavor. So I'm a little disappointed in the flavor here. It's quite intense with the bitterness. And if I had to choose an overall winner, I would have to say it's the first blue labeled group. This first blue panel group really did have a nice mild flavor to it. It had that sunny kind of flavor that we're looking for, which is not too bitter, but you want that crunch, you want that slight nutty flavor to it, and definitely the greenness that comes with the sunflowers. The second one of the blue group was just a little, not a little, it was quite a bit more intense than the first group. And then both the yellow panel groups were quite bitter in their flavor as well. So overall winner in flavor, I'm gonna go with the blue panel groups, though I think all of these could use a little bit of a change in the growing process. I'm not sure what I would do. Maybe less time in the lights, less time for them to develop, and that would probably help out. So I think what I would do next time is I would put these into blackout instead of going straight into the light like I did. And I would give these maybe 2 days to kind of stand up and begin to open up a little bit without actually seeing the light, and then reduce my time from in the light from 5 days maybe down to 3 or 2. That way we get the nice greenness, we get that chlorophyll in them, but they don't have that time to really develop that bitterness that can happen with sunflowers. So let's go ahead and recap. Overall winner in harvest weight was the blue panel groups. Overall winner in appearance was the blue panel groups. Overall winner in flavor was the blue panel groups. I think it's gonna be a shocker, but the overall winner for this test is gonna be the yellow, no, I'm just kidding. It's the blue panel groups. These just, they did a great job. And again, the one change that I would do here is I would reduce the amount of time that these spent in the light for all the groups across the boards. I would put these into maybe a 2-day blackout because I think we went 3 or 4 days in regular germination, and then we went straight into the light for the remaining 5 days. I would do 4 days in germination, 2 days in blackout, and then I would probably put the last 3-4 days into the light. I would keep it probably under 3 or 4, because anytime you go over 3 days in light with sunflowers, you have a much higher chance of that bitterness really kicking in. And if you're curious, you can actually grow sunflowers all the way to blondies. You can just grow them all the way up without actually seeing the light. They'll stay really quite sweet in flavor, and Mandy's working on a video right now that should be out in the next probably week or so, showing that process for growing these basically as vampires where they don't see the light. All right, so let's talk about how much light these, or how much energy these lights use and what our cost is. Okay, so the yellow panel lights. Now one thing you'll notice about the shelf is there's only 2 of these yellow panel lights per shelf, whereas on the blue shelf we actually have 3, and that's because the light dispersion is obviously a lot better on these yellow panels because they're much wider. It's almost 2 of the equivalent sized blue lights for each single light. So it's almost like 4 blue lights in length versus the 3 blue lights down here. But either way, we try to get the light dispersion as even as possible. So let's talk about what this light pulls. So this yellow panel light actually pulls 57.7 watts and 0.46 amps. We run these for 17 hours on and 7 hours off, which means that these consume 0.9809 kilowatt hours per day, which has a running cost per day of it's like 11 cents and 3/4. So basically I'm gonna round that up to 12 cents per day. And if we did 5 days of that, that is, oh my gosh, basic math, I should know this, 0.12 times 5 equals 0.6. So it's 60 cents to run these lights for the 5 days. Now let's come down to the blue panel lights. These blue panel lights consume 52.2, oh, actually let me take that back. The blue panel lights consume each 34.8 watts and 0.27 amps. But since I have to use essentially 1.5 panel lights for both trays, I'm going to calculate what 1.5 of these lights draw in power. So the blue panel lights will consume with the 1.5, 52.2 watts and 0.4 amps. So we're pretty close there, but we're still under what the yellow lights pull. As for how much they draw in energy per day or consume, it is 0.8874 kilowatt hours per day at the 17 hours on and 7-hour off period that we run them for. And our cost per day to run these lights is 10 cents and nearly 3/4 again. So again, I'm gonna raise this up to 11 cents per day to run these. So that means that our running cost is 55 cents per day to run these lights compared to 60 cents for the trays above. Now keep in mind that that is the cost per day, cost for the entire grow for 2 trays. Now if we want to get that down to a single tray, that means that a single tray under the panel lights for 5 days costs 30 cents, and 55 divided by 2, it's like 25.25. 27.5 cents per tray for the blue panel lights and 30 cents per tray for the yellow lights. That was a lot of numbers. I hope that you guys got that. I feel like I have that like meme going with all the little numbers flying around in my head. So the cost is really negligible for 5 days of growth.
I have a question.
Yes.
So where do you get those lights?
Gotcha. Okay, so Mandy had a good point of we do not actually have a good link to these lights. The reason is we bought these several years ago and we have not seen them back on Amazon yet. And I haven't found any other comparable blue lights on there. We've ordered a few, but they looked like they were homemade and it did not seem safe at all. So we do not have a good link for blue panel lights yet. We are kind of searching though. I've seen a few other sources, but they're like really quite expensive. Some of the kind of bar style blue lights that I've found are about $120 a piece, and really I think that's a little obnoxious considering it's just blue LEDs, but those are really special grow lights. So I'm still on the hunt for some blue panel lights. Now actually that brings up a good point. The last thing I want to talk about is light dispersion. So one thing you'll notice about these panel lights that we kind of saw throughout the test is the back has less light, and so does the front as well as the sides on these panel lights. And that is because these panel lights sit in the middle of the shelf and they don't extend all the way over. So our light dispersion is very limited in the amount of arc that it can hit out towards the side. Same thing goes with these blue panel lights. You can tell right here, it's a little bit darker in between, especially over on these sides. And you can see on the front how much darker the color gets over here. And that's why we had a lot more stretching on the sides. Those were reaching up for the light versus these kind of lights, the bar lights. The reason we really like these T5s and bar lights like this is we get really great light dispersion. We're able to put a light at the very back, one in the middle, and one towards the front. And what happens is this gives us a really nice even arc of light throughout this tray, and that's why you can see like right here on our fenugreek that we have a very nice even tray that doesn't have any kind of reaching up at the front or sides or anything like that. And that is just mainly due to light dispersion. So that's the one challenge with the panel lights that I have found. And also you can see how much higher these shelves are in their height because of that. I've had to raise these shelves up to 14 inches to be able to get the light to hit the front and the back as even as I can for both these shelves, versus you can see below it how much tighter these shelves are for this blurple panel light. This is our normal shelf height of about 10 inches here. So it's pretty substantial. You do lose a little bit of room on your rack, but if you're not growing a ton of these trays, they are great lights. You just have to compromise for the amount of space that they need to get maximum light dispersion. All right, you guys, I know that was a lot of information. There's a lot to learn around lights and microgreens, and that's why we are always continuing to do tests on it. And if you guys are curious, we have a book where we cover a lot of these topics. We talk about our favorite lights, a lot of the results of these tests, and that is our book, Becoming a Microgreen Master. We did our best to incorporate as much information about growing as we could. We talk about our grow space, we talk about lights, we talk about mediums, we talk about nutrients, crops, seed sourcing, how we would arrange our grow space if we were to do commercial grow versus what we do with our experiments. We talk about the cost of our trailer and just so much information, as well as, like I showed you guys, some dampening off and stuff like that. We talk about pathogens, how to treat it, how to prevent it, and stuff like that. So it's just as much information as we could pack into a book for under $16. That's on our website and Amazon Kindle. So be sure to check that out if you guys are really serious about growing. It's just got a ton of information. We try to make it as low in cost as we could. That way we can get this to as many people as we can. We also have it coming out in Chinese, German, French, Spanish, and a few other languages as well right now that we're working on. So we're gonna have this translated into all those different languages. I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please give us a thumbs up. If you dislike this video, give us a thumbs down. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them in the section below and we will do our best to get those answered for you as soon as we possibly can. Our Instagram and our Facebook are both @OnTheGrowFarms. Our website is www.onthegrow.net. Thank you guys so much. Have a great day and keep on believing.